like be the family, be in the family, be part of the family, do what the family's, doing.
It started with a voice that had once been quiet for far too long. A voice that had endured betrayal, humiliation, and decades of silence, but no longer. On a cloudless morning inside a packed Arizona courtroom, the low click of Meri Brown's heels echoed across the polished floors as she rose from her chair and walked with measured grace toward the witness stand. No cameras were allowed in the courtroom, but if they had been, every single lens would have captured that moment, the once muted first wife of a polygamous empire stepping into the harsh, fluorescent glow of justice. Meri wore a navy blue blazer, structured and no-nonsense, with her signature blonde hair pulled tightly back, not for fashion, but for resolve. In her hand was a bulging folder of papers, financial statements, emails, contracts, receipts from a life where she had given everything and received almost nothing in return. She walked past Robyn and Kody without a glance, though her presence alone was thunderous. Robyn's eyes lowered instinctively, and Kody stared straight ahead, his jaw already clenched as if preparing for a war he didn't believe he could lose. But Meri wasn't waging war. She was reclaiming dignity. She stepped to the microphone, adjusted it down slightly with a steady hand, and scanned the silent courtroom before locking eyes with the judge, a composed woman in her 60s who gave a small nod. Meri's gaze then flicked toward Kody, and when she finally spoke, her voice was steady, but each word trembled with years of pain that had been buried deep. "Your Honor," she began, "I stand here today to reclaim what was owed to me not only as a wife, but as a woman, as a mother, as a human being." There was a hush in the courtroom, the kind of stillness that signals something sacred or irreversible is happening. Kody sat rigidly, arms folded across his chest, while Robyn fidgeted with the edge of her skirt. "I want what's mine," Meri repeated. "And I'm not backing down." In the gallery, people whispered in shock. To them, Meri had always been the soft-spoken first wife, the one who faded into the backdrop as Kody's heart migrated elsewhere, particularly toward Robyn. Fans of Sister Wives had witnessed her unraveling on television, the catfishing scandal, her heartbreak, her lonely struggle to remain relevant in a family that was moving on without her. But none of that woman remained. The woman now on the stand was not a footnote in a polygamous saga. She was the central figure in a courtroom showdown years in the making. And today wasn't about the TV show or failed marriages. It was about Coyote Pass, a 12-acre promise of equality nestled in Flagstaff, Arizona, sold as a shared inheritance for a plural family, but in reality a tool of manipulation and control. Meri held up a paper. "This," she said, "is a payment statement from August 14th, 2018, a deposit from my business account into our family trust. This trust was supposed to cover the Coyote Pass property. But my name is not on the deed." Her hand shook slightly, but she did not falter. "Another paper? This is an email from our real estate broker confirming my investment interest. Another document. And this is a copy of our TLC show contract. All of us wives agreed that our income from the show would go toward building our family's future, toward homes on this land." She didn't shout. She didn't cry. Her tone cut deeper than either. Meri's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in a tan suit, sat silently nearby, allowing Meri's voice to carry the weight it needed to. "When Kody and I legally divorced in 2014, Meri continued, eyes now boring into Kody's, I did so thinking spiritual equality would still exist, that our family would still respect the covenants we made." She turned back to the judge. "That was a lie." Kody shifted uncomfortably. Robyn's face flushed, her eyes now fixed on the floor. "I spent 30 years in this family. I raised a child. I helped build a show that funded this property. And I've now been informed quietly, indirectly, but deliberately, that I'm not worthy of a single acre." Her fingers tightened. "Around the wooden stand, I surrendered my legal marriage. I surrendered my voice. but I am done giving." Behind her, Janelle Brown gave a single nod, her arms crossed and her expression unreadable. It was a silent statement. "I'm with you." The judge's voice cut through the silence. "Mrs. Brown, are you claiming that the Coyote Pass property was meant to be equally divided among the 4 wives?" Meri answered immediately. "Yes, Your Honor, that was the agreement. Verbal, financial, emotional, and contractual." The judge pressed, "And you were unaware your name wasn't listed on the deed?" Meri replied, "Not until late 2023. That's when Janelle and I started comparing documents." That's when everything unraveled. The courtroom leaned in, and what was Mr. Brown's explanation? Meri exhaled. "He said he worked harder, so he deserved more. But that was never how we operated. We agreed to split the land because we were a family." The judge nodded slowly, taking notes. As a bailiff handed over a folder of evidence, Kody's lawyer rose. "Objection, Your Honor," he said stiffly. "Mrs. Brown's testimony includes emotional interpretations rather than legal facts. She did not contribute financially to the extent Mr. Brown did. Her role in this family was spiritual, not fiscal." Meri gave a scoff under her breath as she returned to her seat, but it was her lawyer who rose next, calm, direct, and armed with facts. "With all due respect, this entire family functioned under one financial umbrella. Income from their reality TV show, book sales, speaking engagements, and business ventures were deposited into shared accounts. Mr. Brown deliberately kept the finances blurred. Mrs. Brown, not just a spiritual wife, she was an unpaid business partner in a decades-long enterprise that funded Coyote Pass. Outside, reporters had begun to gather. Rumors from inside the courtroom trickled out like drops of oil, thick, staining, and impossible to ignore. The press caught glimpses of Kody's hardened expression as he exited for a brief recess. There had once been a time Meri looked at him with longing. Now she looked at him like a stranger, or worse, like an adversary. And maybe that's exactly what he had become. The courtroom drama wasn't just about land or names on a deed. About a woman who had waited too long for validation that never came. And another who had discovered too late how deeply the betrayal ran. Janelle and Meri now sat side by side in a conference room with their legal teams, going over documents that should have been simple, but it turned into a jigsaw puzzle of deceit. On the table was a large map of Coyote Pass, divided into 4 quadrants. "We were each promised a portion," Janelle murmured, pointing to the plotted land. "Okay. But look, our names aren't anywhere. Not even on the edges. Nothing." Meri nodded silently. She'd known already. The betrayal wasn't abrupt. It was slow, methodical, hidden beneath decades of gaslighting and false reassurances. She thought back to those early days in Flagstaff, to family meetings around the fire pit where Kody laid out his grand dream. Each wife will have a house. We'll be neighbors, but still have space. This will be our legacy. Robyn had smiled brightly. Christine looked unsure. Janelle asked about water lines, and Meri clung to those words like a lifeline. At that time, her legal marriage to Kody had already been dissolved so he could adopt Robyn's children. But he had looked her in the eye and said, "You'll always be my wife in every way that matters." Those words now echoed in her head, like a taunt, not a promise, a warning. It was Janelle who discovered the truth. In 2023, she was going through tax paperwork, trying to understand why she'd received a delinquent notice. When she visited the county courthouse for clarification, she got more than a tax breakdown, she got a revelation. "I asked for the ownership records," she later told Meri, "and only 2 names kept appearing: Kody Brown and Robyn Brown." Meri's breath had caught. "Key told me the same thing he told you," Janelle added. "Key, that he put in more money, that he worked harder." They looked at each other, knowing they had been told different versions of the same lie. It was a pattern one Kody had relied on for years, shifting the rules, redefining equality. Building a reality on television that masked the deeper reality at home. The Coyote Pass project wasn't a shared dream. It was leverage for Meri. That realization brought clarity, but not peace. She had stayed in the family even after the catfishing scandal. Even after Kody distanced himself publicly and emotionally. She had stayed because she believed that loyalty would eventually yield belonging. That the man who married her first would never completely erase her from the legacy they built together. But he had. Quietly, strategically, legally, he had rewritten the story so that it ended with him and Robyn as sole beneficiaries of everything: the land, the money, the history. I kept telling myself, Meri whispered one day in the hallway outside the courtroom, that if I waited long enough, he'd come back. That I still mattered, but he didn't, and I don't. Not in his world. Not in his contracts. Not in his deeds. And that's why this case matters. Because it's not just about 12 acres in Arizona. It's about decades of unpaid labor, emotional servitude, and spiritual manipulation. It's about women who were promised a future and then erased from it. It's about the myth of equal. Wives in a system that was never equal. Kody Brown may still believe he was justified, that he carried the weight of the family and deserved the reward. But for Meri and Janelle, the truth is this: they carried it too. In silence. In sacrifice. And now, finally, in court. In court.
I am floored. Like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with this.
This wasn't merely about property. This was about betrayal, fiduciary duty, and a woman reclaiming her place after decades of silence. After years of playing the obedient wife, quietly shouldering her part in a fractured family presented as harmonious, Meri Brown took a step no one believed she ever would. Her entrance into the courtroom wasn't loud or dramatic, but it changed everything. Clad in a deep navy blazer, blonde hair softly curling around her shoulders, Meri walked. With quiet authority, each footstep echoing with resolve. There were no television cameras, no production crew. No TLC editors to soften the edges, just truth, long suppressed and finally unchained. She approached the stand not as the woman the public had come to know on Sister Wives, but as someone transformed, hardened by betrayal, strengthened by grief, and fueled by justice. Her solicitor stood first, voice composed but firm. This case, Your Honor, is not merely about land. 'Tis about fiduciary responsibility, about the misrepresentation of ownership, about deception cloaked as family unity. He gestured towards a bundle of documents already entered into evidence paper trails that traced Kody Brown's secret dealings and his calculated erasure of the very women who had helped him build his public legacy. Among the exhibits was a 2021 land transfer document. It was simple, but damning. Kody had transferred Plot 3 of Coyote Pass into joint tenancy with Robyn Brown. There were no other names, no signatures from the other wives, no disclosure. Just two names, Kody and Robyn, written in ink and arrogance. Kody, in his deposition, appeared smug. I paid for 92% of the property, he declared. The others committed to contribute, but I fronted the money. I had to be in control to make sure the land was developed properly. He said it as though it were an irrefutable truth, but the courtroom saw through him, cause that money hadn't come solely from Kody's personal earnings. It came from years of reality show income, family brand deals, public appearances, all built on the image of a plural family, an image that would have collapsed without Meri, Janelle, Christine, and their children. Meri's solicitor leaned forward, unflinching. Mr. Brown, may I ask from whose earnings did you pay that 92%? Was it not income generated by the show, which required Meri and Janelle's active participation? Kody faltered. They were involved, he said evasively. But did they receive equal payout? No. I managed distribution. And who authorized that? The solicitor pressed. TLC, a business manager? Or you alone? Kody's silence said it all. He had viewed the women not as equal, partners, but as props, interchangeable and expendable. And Robyn was no innocent bystander. Emails obtained from the real estate solicitor handling the Coyote Pass dealings revealed her complicity. In one she wrote, "We don't want the other wives to make things messy. Better to finalize everything before they notice." The defense attempted to argue context that Robyn was referring to legal clarity, not deception. But Meri's solicitor would have none of it. If that were the case, why were the other wives not consulted? Why were no meetings held? Why was Meri still paying tax on a parcel she no longer legally owned? There were no good answers. Just avoidance. Weeks before the trial began, Meri had visited Coyote Pass alone. The high desert wind cut through her coat as she stood overlooking the land that once symbolized unity. She remembered standing there in 2018, Kody pointing enthusiastically across the ridges, promising, "You'll have the best porch." The best view. At the time, she had believed him. She'd imagined sipping coffee on that porch, grandchildren playing nearby, maybe even healing with Kody. But that dream was gone now. The porch had never been built. The family had fractured. All that remained was earth, empty and echoing. She picked up a rock and held it tightly in her hand. "This is all I'll get," she whispered to herself, "if I don't fight." And so, she did. When Meri and Janelle walked into that courtroom, it was not simply to win a lawsuit. It was to draw a line in the sand. For years, they had been told to wait, to trust, that God rewarded silence and obedience. But silence does not place your name on a deed. Obedience does not purchase land. And trust does not shield you from betrayal. They had allowed Kody to build a future on their backs, only to be discarded when the walls were up. The judge called a brief recess, but the room did not stir. Everyone stayed, breath held, waiting for what would come next. The clerk approached. "Miss Brown, please take the stand." A hush descended. Meri rose slowly, shoulders square, eyes sharp. Kody watched her, jaw tight. Robyn leaned in, whispering furiously to their barrister. But nothing stopped Meri. She walked to the witness stand like a woman stepping into the light after decades in shadow. She spoke calmly. "Your Honor, I was raised in a world where silence was considered loyalty, where women were taught to wait, to be patient, to trust that things would eventually balance. I waited, I believed, I trusted." She paused. "But waiting does not build homes. Waiting does not secure your name on property. Waiting does not protect your rights." She looked down at her hands, then back at the judge. "And that is why I'm here today." She opened the folder before her. "This," she said, holding up a paper, "is the 2018 contract signed by all members of the family. States that all revenue from the TLC program and related businesses would be equally invested into the development of Coyote Pass." The judge nodded, admitted into evidence. "Exhibit 17A, her solicitor added. We were told we'd each have our own plot." Kody repeated it often. He called it our legacy. "But in 2023, I discovered that the land had been quietly divided without consent. And every plot now belongs to Kody and Robyn." Murmurs swept the courtroom. Even the judge shifted forward, intrigued. Then came the emails. From Kody, February 2021. "I believe it is more desirable that we complete the paperwork prior to the wives asking questions." Another one, this time from Robyn. "Let's finalize it before they get involved. Less drama." Reaction was audible gasps from the gallery. Reporters scribbling notes. Robyn flushed red. Kody tightened his fists. Meri continued. "I was never notified. I never signed anything, but I paid taxes on that land." She turned to Kody directly. "Because I trusted you." Then she pulled out another paper. "This is a payment. I made £18,200 from my LuLaRoe business. I was told it secured my plot. I have 6 such transactions." She faced the judge again. "I was told I hadn't paid enough. that I wasn't serious about the land. But I invested, I gave my income, I gave my name. I gave my life, and I became invisible. The silence in the courtroom was complete. The judge leaned forward. Miss Brown, to clarify, you asserting that mutual verbal financial, quote, and contractual agreements existed within the family, and that Mr. Brown violated those in secret. Yes, Your Honor. And that Mrs. Brown Robyn was complicit. In this transfer, yes. What is your desired outcome? That they either buy me out at market value or we divide the land as it was promised. Then it was Kody's turn. He approached the stand with reluctance, jaw clenched, shoulders hunched. Did you inform Meri of the deed transfer? The judge asked. No, Kody replied. Why not? She seemed uninterested, distant. I didn't think she cared anymore. Did she contribute financially? She might have. I don't know. Meri's solicitor stood and presented bank statements. Are these hers? Kody nodded. Yes. Then she contributed. And you still excluded her? I had to act fast, Kody barked. Only Robyn and I were taking it seriously. I didn't have time to hold hands. Gasps again. A reporter in the gallery nearly dropped his notepad. The judge's expression darkened. Mr. Brown, did you utilize shared family finances to purchase land placed solely in your name and Robyn's? He hesitated. Yes, and that was the moment everything fell apart. The mask, the patriarch, the spiritual leader, the loving husband crumbled. What stood now was a man who had used unity as a shield and faith as a weapon. He had built an empire not on love, but on manipulation. Robyn buried her face in her hands. There would be further proceedings, additional evidence, perhaps even footage TLC never aired. But the truth had already landed, heavy and undeniable. Meri Brown had broken the silence. She had confronted the man who had dominated her life publicly, and without apology. And for the first time in years, she stood on solid ground, not because Kody gave it to her, but because she took it back. She took it back.
Let's just put it this way. Robyn was good at communicating with me, at loving me,
and negotiating with you.
Outside the courthouse, Meri Brown stood upon the cold, solid steps. The crisp air catching in her throat, not from nerves, but from resolve that had taken years to harden. That night, as reporters swarmed and camera lenses zoomed in like hawks, Meri did not flinch. I didn't come here to hurt anyone, she said, her voice shaking slightly but unbroken. I came here to stop being erased. And in that sentence lay the weight of decades of smiling when she wanted to scream, of standing quietly while others spoke over her, of swallowing disappointment and being asked to call it love. For too long, the women of the Brown family had been expected to uphold a vision of plural marriage that demanded obedience while giving them nothing in return. But now, the silence had shattered. This is about equality, she continued. This is about truth, and never again letting someone else tell your story for you. Behind her stood Janelle, steady and strong, not as a supporting character, but as a co-author in this reckoning. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere thickened as the clerk summoned the next witness. Mrs. Robyn Brown, take the stand. Everything. Stilled papers froze mid-flutter. Chairs halted. Mid-creaks, Robyn's heels clicked tentatively across the polished floor. The confident, camera-ready version of her was gone, placed by a woman keenly aware that her chapter in the Brown family's public fairy tale was about to be rewritten by the truth. Her voice trembled as she was sworn in, and as her lawyer began questioning, she clung to her carefully rehearsed restraint. It was always my understanding, she said, that the land would be divided evenly. 1 parcel each. That's what Kody told us. When asked if she believed Meri and Janelle were rightful owners, she hesitated. At first, yes. But then things changed. People left. Christine went. Meri became distant. Janelle was frustrated. It felt like I was the only one still committed to the dream. But Meri's lawyer wasn't interested in dreams. She was here for facts. Cross-examination began sharply. You say you trusted Kody with the paperwork, but weren't you Kona on 3 of the plots? Robyn nodded. So you didn't question why Meri and Janelle were omitted? I thought they weren't interested anymore, she offered, visibly squirming. Instead of verifying, you signed legal documents that put everything under your and Kody's control. I was just following orders, Robyn muttered, and the room gasped. Then came the document. Did you send this? Note to the solicitor. We do not want the other wives to make it messy. It's better if we get it all done before they even notice. Robyn went white. I meant emotionally messy, not deceptive. But the momentum had turned. You and your husband created a legal framework that excluded 2 women who had helped pay for this land. Robyn's voice cracked. I trusted him, she cried. I thought they didn't care anymore. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Then her composure dissolved. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to keep what little family we had left. The judge offered her a recess. No, Robyn said, gasping. I want to say this. I've been blamed for everything. The fans hate me. The other wives hate me. I never asked to be the legal wife. I never asked for favoritism. She turned to Meri, voice ragged. I'm sorry. I never meant for you to feel pushed out, but Meri did not move. She didn't cry, didn't blink. She simply watched the woman who had benefited most from her silence finally collapse beneath the truth. I signed things I didn't read. I didn't ask questions, Robyn confessed. But that wasn't good enough. Tension matters. Meri's lawyer said firmly, but so does accountability. You profited from land they helped finance. You live in a finished home while they were denied a foundation. That is not trust. That is complicity. Robyn wept, shoulders trembling. The court no longer pitied her. The gallery of fans, journalists, and longtime viewers recognized something in that moment, something painfully familiar. Women being told to wait, to trust, to stay silent, and to see their sacrifices turned into someone else's gain. This was no longer just about the Browns. It was about every woman who'd been left behind in the name of unity. When Robyn stepped down, the judge gave a stern warning. Mrs. Brown, emotional distress does not excuse legal negligence. There will be consequences. Robyn sat beside Kody, who still refused to meet her gaze. The silence between them spoke. Volumes 3. Long weeks passed. When the judge returned to deliver the ruling, the air was thick with tension. This court finds that verbal, written, and financial agreements were made among all adult parties concerning the acquisition and development of Coyote Pass. Though informal in parts, they were presented publicly and internally as binding and equal. Meri sat upright. Janelle squeezed her hand. The plaintiffs, Miss Meri Brown and Miss Janelle Brown, have proven through financial documents and contractual evidence that they had legitimate claims of joint ownership. Mr. Kody Brown, with assistance from Mrs. Robyn Brown, secured full legal title to the land without fair disclosure or compensation. The room seemed to exhale all at once. It is hereby ordered that the Coyote Pass land be reappraised at current market value. Miss Meri Brown and Miss Janelle Brown shall receive equal reimbursement within 90 days. If this is not fulfilled, the land is to be sold and divided equally 25% to each of the 4 original adult spouses. Meri closed her eyes and released a breath that had been held for years. She didn't cry, she didn't cheer. She simply turned to Janelle and smiled. Across the aisle, Robyn buried her face in her hands. Kody stared at the wall like a man who had just realized the throne he built was a cardboard cutout. Outside, chaos erupted. Reporters called her name. Twitter exploded. Gwen tweeted, "Mom was right. So was Meri. They deserved that land." Peden added a TikTok. "Kody's not mad, he lost. He's mad he got caught." Robyn said nothing. Curtains drawn at her home. Rumors swirled she might not return to The show at all TLC was reportedly reconsidering her role. And the so-called favorite wife was no longer immune. Weeks later, Meri posted a video from a small cabin-style house near Park City, Utah. "This is mine," she smiled, panning across the warm wood interior. "It's not just a house. It's proof you can begin again from any place, at any age." Agreed, I matter. In the comments, women from across the world wrote, "We're proud of you, Meri. You did it." Because she had. And what she gained wasn't just land, it was her voice. For too long, she had been painted as desperate, needy, weak. But Meri wasn't weak. She was faithful to a fault. And faith, when weaponized, becomes a cage. That courtroom cracked the lock. It revealed that Kody's leadership was about power, not love. That Robyn's tears were not always innocent. That silence is not agreement. And that Meri was never invisible. She was simply waiting for the right moment. And when it came, she didn't just speak, she roared. For more stories like this and exclusive exposes on the truth behind the Sister Wives legacy, subscribe to Starspill USA, where the truth always has a voice.